Welcome to Heartbreaker, your love radio. How far would you go for love? Let me tell you, if your answer isn't to the very end, then you don't know what love is. And this is the story of Emily. Emily could never forget the night she met Michael. It all began at a dinner with friends, in a small Italian restaurant, whose walls were covered with artificial vines and warm lights softly twinkling in the background. Emily, naturally a bit anxious, kept adjusting her dress while her friends laughed and chatted. The anticipation grew with each passing minute as everyone talked about Michael, the friend who would soon arrive. When he finally entered, the atmosphere seemed to change. Michael had a contagious smile and an energy that seemed to lift the spirits of everyone around. He greeted each person at the table with a warm hug, and when it was Emily's turn, something special happened. Hi, I'm Michael," he said with a smile. And I've heard a lot about you." Emily, usually shy, immediately felt at ease. "Yo, really? I hope only good things," she replied, trying to contain her nervousness. Only the best," Michael winked, and they both laughed, a light moment that sealed the beginning of something new. The conversation between them flowed naturally throughout the night. Michael shared stories of his travels, talked about the books he loved, and the music that had shaped his life. Emily listened, fascinated. He was like an open book, each word adding more color to the canvas she was painting of him in her mind. It was hard not to fall in love with someone so open and vibrant. As the night was nearly over, Michael leaned over the table, closer to Emily, and whispered, "You know, I was really looking forward to meeting you. Our friends haven't stopped talking about you. And they were right, you're even more impressive in person." Emily felt her heart race. "You are exactly as they described, and even more," she admitted, feeling a mix of joy and fear. On the way home, as the taxi glided through the city's night streets, Emily couldn't get Michael out of her head. He was everything she had ever dreamed of, and the fear of losing him was already beginning to nestle deep in her heart. She knew she was falling in love, perhaps too quickly, perhaps too deeply. But at that moment, none of that mattered. Michael had chosen to speak with her, to sit next to her, to smile at her. And for Emily, that was already a small miracle. A second encounter between Emily and Michael was filled with expectations. After a first night that could only be described as magical, both longed for more moments together. Michael had planned something special, a nighttime stroll through the city park, which, even under the dim light of old street lamps, maintained an air of romance and mystery. Emily dressed carefully, choosing a light dress that swayed gently with each step she took. Seeing her, Michael could not hide his enchantment. "You look stunning tonight," he said, offering her a smile that made her heart skip a beat. "You always know what to say," Emily responded, feeling as if she was floating on clouds. They walked side by side through the park, talking about dreams, about the future, about everything and nothing at the same time. At one point, they sat on a bench under an old tree, whose leaves whispered secrets to the wind. Michael held Emily's hand, looking into her eyes with an intensity that seemed to try to decipher her soul. "Emily, I feel that there is something very special between us," he began, his voice soft in the chilly night air. "I don't want to rush things, but I also don't want to lose what could be a chance for something real." Emily felt a mix of joy and fear. "I feel it too, Michael. I'm a bit scared, I confess. Everything is happening so fast." But that's good, isn't it? When something is right, you feel it." Michael squeezed her hand, a gesture of comfort and promise. They continued to talk, each word and touch building the foundation of what promised to be an intense and passionate relationship. As the night progressed, and without realizing it, hours passed. Michael, always attentive, noticed that Emily was starting to feel cold. "Let me warm you," he said, removing his jacket and wrapping it around Emily's shoulders. She snuggled into him, feeling a sense of security she hadn't felt in a long time. Before they said goodbye, Michael kissed her gently. "This is just the beginning," he whispered, a promising smile shining on his face. As the weeks turned into months, the relationship between Emily and Michael began to show cracks beneath the surface of their overwhelming passion. Initially, there were only small moments of jealousy from Emily, triggered by innocent comments or prolonged looks from other women. But these moments began to accumulate, each adding weight to Emily's already burdened heart. On a rainy afternoon, while sharing coffee at a small cafe near the park where they usually walked, an incident revealed the intensity of Emily's jealousy. Michael was laughing and waving at a coworker who passed by the cafe window. His easy smile and friendly nature, once enchanting, now seemed treacherous to Emily. "Do you need to flirt with everyone who passes by?" she asked, her tone sharper than she intended. Michael, surprised, furrowed his brow. Emily, I was just being polite. She's my coworker." I know. But it's always like this, Michael. Can't you see how it hurts me?" Emily retorted, her voice trembling with frustration and fear. The argument escalated quickly, with accusations and defenses thrown like arrows in a battle neither could win. "You're always exaggerating, turning every little gesture into a conspiracy against us," Michael argued, his patience running thin. "I just want to feel like I can trust you, that I am the only one for you," Emily exclaimed, tears starting to form in her eyes. These fights became a constant, each one leaving deeper scars. On several occasions, Michael ended the relationship, exhausted by the constant need to justify himself. Emily, in turn, became desperate, promising to change, pleading for another chance. And, like a vicious cycle, they reconciled, driven by the memory of their moments of happiness. On a particularly difficult night, after another party where Michael had been the center of attention, Emily exploded again. Back at home, as Michael tried to calm her, she shouted, "Why can't you just be mine? Why does everyone have to adore you so much?" Michael, tired and frustrated, responded in a tone harsher than ever, "Because I can't change who I am, Emily. And you can't ask that of me. I try to give you all my love, but it never seems to be enough." It was then that the reality of how toxic their love had become hit Emily. Despite the reconciliations and promises of change, the truth was that the abyss between them only grew, fueled by fear and insecurity. Each reconciliation seemed only a temporary pause in the storm that their love had become, a destructive pattern that threatened to completely engulf them. The weeks of turbulence in Emily and Michael's relationship culminated in a fateful day that neither could have predicted. Emily noticed that Michael was more distant, and an argument had started over something trivial, a misinterpreted comment during dinner, but quickly escalated to deeper accusations, old resentments, and unhealed wounds. Michael's voice echoed through the room, each word laden with frustration. We can't go on like this, Emily. This constant jealousy, these fights, it's destroying us," Michael exclaimed, his patience clearly at its limit. Emily, feeling panic rise as she realized she might truly lose Michael this time, struggled to find something, anything, that might make him stay. In a moment of absolute desperation, she saw an opportunity in the dramatic pause of the conversation and spoke, the words escaping her lips almost without her realizing, "Michael, I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael stopped abruptly, the anger in his eyes giving way to surprise and then confusion. What? Emily, are you serious?" Emily, now trapped in the web of her own lie, nodded, avoiding Michael's gaze. Yes, I found out recently. I didn't know how to tell you, especially with all our fights." Michael, whose expression had shifted from annoyed to completely stunned, slowly approached Emily. He wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that, despite everything, something wonderfully positive was emerging from their turbulent relationship. This is incredible, but... Emily, is this true?" Michael asked, the doubt still evident in his voice. Emily felt the weight of remorse beginning to settle in, but the fear of losing Michael compelled her to maintain her facade. Yes, it's true," she lied again, forcing a tremulous smile. Michael, still uncertain, decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. He embraced Emily, trying to absorb the news. "This changes everything," he murmured, half to himself, half to her. We'll figure this out, Emily. We'll make this work, for our baby." As Michael held her, Emily felt simultaneously relieved and terribly guilty. She had managed to avoid a potential breakup, but at the cost of a lie she knew would have devastating consequences. Weeks later, Michael noticed Emily had been very nervous in recent days, her anxiety palpable in the air between them. Emily, you've been acting strangely lately. Is there something you're not telling me?" She hesitated, her eyes downcast, struggling with the words. Finally, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world, she murmured, "Michael, Before she could continue, Michael, already impatient with the mystery and recent tensions, interrupted. You're not pregnant, are you? Is that what you're trying to tell me? I knew it. Emily froze. The lie about a pregnancy she had fabricated in a desperate attempt to keep Michael close was about to be exposed. She knew she could no longer hide the truth. With tears forming in her eyes, she confessed, No, Michael. I lied about being pregnant. I thought that it would keep us together. But I was wrong. I am sorry. Michael stepped back, the betrayal hitting him harder than any argument before. How could you? Emily, this is manipulation. How can you play with something so serious? The atmosphere between them, already charged, became unbearable. Michael, still in shock from the revelation, continued, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can be with someone who would do something like this. It was then that Emily discovered something that would devastate her even more. While they were arguing, the screen of Michael's cell phone lit up with a message from an old girlfriend, clearly reigniting an old romance. Her name shone on the screen, a simple message, I'm looking forward to seeing you today. Seeing this, Emily felt as if the ground disappeared beneath her feet. Are you cheating on me with her? Emily, shaken, tried to approach him, but Michael stepped back, clearly marking the distance between them. I tried, Emily, I really tried to understand and forgive. But this was too much. The falseness of this pregnancy, it broke something in me that I don't know if can be fixed. He looked at the cell phone again, the message still glowing on the screen. This message, it just makes me realize that I need to be away. Away from the manipulations, away from the lies. I need to think about myself now. Michael spoke with a cold resolution, the decision clear in his voice and posture. Emily felt a growing despair, the reality of her actions hitting her like never before. Please, Michael, don't leave me like this. We can try to fix this, I can change. Oh no, Emily, Michael interrupted firmly. Some things can't be undone. We need some time apart. I need space to clear my head. With those final words, Michael grabbed his keys and jacket, walking towards the door. I hope you find what you need to be truly happy, he said, before closing the door behind him, leaving Emily alone with the weight of her choices and the stifling silence of the now empty apartment. Emily, defeated and desperate, watched as her world crumbled. The lies she had woven around them now enveloped her like a dark and suffocating web. Michael returned to the apartment the next day. As he opened the door, the silent and muffled sound that greeted him seemed like a harbinger of the confrontation that was about to occur. Emily, noticing Michael's return, ran to meet him, her eyes brimming with tears, her face marked by anxiety. Michael, please, can we talk? Her voice trembled with the weight of despair. Michael, with a resolute and determined expression, avoided looking directly into her eyes. Hey Emily, I need you to leave, he began, his voice firm yet laden with deep sadness. I need space, time to think, and I can't do that with you here. Emily felt as if the ground were opening beneath her feet. Michael, please, don't do this. I have nowhere to go, and I can change. I will change. Forgive me, I beg you. Michael shook his head, the decision clear in his eyes. Emily, it's not just about forgiveness. It's about trust, about respect. You broke something fundamental between us. I'm going to work now, and when I come back, I expect you to have found a place to go. Michael's words cut Emily like blades, each syllable a sentence of exile. Michael, please, she now cried, tears flowing freely. I did this because I love you, because I was afraid of losing you. Give me another chance. Michael, with a heavy heart, grabbed his backpack and headed to the door. I know you're scared, Emily, but that doesn't justify what you did. Love is not manipulation. I really hope you find help, that you find a way to not rely on these games to keep someone. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions. With these final words, Michael closed the door behind him, leaving Emily alone in the emptiness of the apartment. She fell to her knees, sobbing, the sound of her own pain echoing off the walls that had housed so many moments of both their lives. Following the devastating revelation and the threat of imminent abandonment, Emily was enveloped in a veil of despair and fear. The idea of losing Michael to someone else awakened in her an urgent need to act, no matter how extreme or destructive the chosen course might be. In a moment of absolute panic, she conceived a plan that would change the course of their lives forever. In the silence of her room, while Michael was at work, Emily began to execute her plot. She dressed in loose, dark clothes, preparing for the role she was about to play. With trembling, determined movements, she inflicted injuries on herself, creating marks and bruises that appeared to have been caused by a violent fight. Each action was a step toward the abyss she was digging herself. By late afternoon, with the marks made and pain pulsating both physically and emotionally, Emily made the call that would seal Michael's fate. With a trembling voice, she spoke to the emergency operator. "Please help me. My boyfriend, he assaulted me. I'm afraid of what he might do when he returns." The response was immediate. Within minutes, the police were at her door, and Emily, with tears in her eyes, recounted her fabricated story. The officers observed the marks, her crouched posture, the apparent fear in her eyes, and had no doubts that they needed to act. When Michael returned, he was greeted by flashing police lights and officers waiting for him. Confusion was etched on his face as he tried to understand the scene before him. What's going on here? Emily, what did you tell them?" Emily, looking away, avoided his gaze. In a low voice, but loud enough for the officers to hear, she said, "I had to do it, Michael. You were going to leave me. But I never hurt you. This is madness, Emily. Why are you doing this?" Michael shouted, his frustration and fear overflowing as the officers approached to detain him. With Michael handcuffed and being led to the police car, he still looked at Emily, searching for some explanation, some spark of the love they had shared that could explain the inexplicable. But all he saw was a woman he no longer recognized, a stranger wrapped in her own webs of despair. At that moment, as the car drove away, Emily felt a bitter relief. She had managed to prevent Michael from leaving her, but at the cost of her own soul. Now, as the reality of her actions began to weigh on her, the fear of being discovered as a liar became as frightening as the loneliness she was trying to avoid. The quiet of the night brought no peace to Emily. On the contrary, every shadow and every whisper of the wind seemed to carry echoes of her choices. Sitting alone in her small apartment, the walls seemed to close in on her, as if they could judge her actions and whisper painful truths she struggled to ignore. Michael was in jail, a result of her schemes, and although part of her felt a twisted relief, another part of Emily was terrified at the possibility of her crime being discovered. She reflected on the past weeks, the choices made, and the lies told. "I did what I had to do," she murmured to herself, trying to ward off the guilt that threatened to consume her. "He will see, he will understand that no one loves him like I do." The idea of visiting Michael in prison became an obsession. Emily imagined the encounter, rehearsing what she would say, how she would dress, and how she would look into his eyes to convey her unwavering love. "He will understand, he needs to understand," she repeated like a mantra. Planning her first visit, Emily chose her clothes carefully, opting for something simple yet elegant, something that would show Michael the woman he had loved. In the mirror, she practiced her smile, a smile that hid the internal storm of fear and desire. On the day of the visit, Emily's heart was pounding as she approached the prison complex, the sound of the gates closing behind her echoing like an omen. Sitting across from Michael, separated by a cold, impersonal glass, she tried to read the emotions on his face. Michael, visibly thinner and more worn down, looked at her with a mix of confusion and resignation. "Hey Emily, why did you do this? Do you really think that locking me up here will make me love you?" Michael's words struck Emily like a cold, precise blade. "I just wanted you to see how much I love you, to realize that no one else could feel for you what I feel," she replied, her voice trembling. "But love is not possession, Emily. What you did, that's not love," Michael said, each word laden with sadness and disillusionment. Emily felt tears streaming freely, her facade of confidence crumbling. I know I was wrong. But I was so scared of losing you." The two remained silent, the sound of the outside world muffled by the glass between them. Emily realized, perhaps too late, the truth in Michael's words. Her act of desperation had crossed lines that should not have been crossed, and now, as she looked at the man she loved behind bars, she knew that any hope of reconciliation was as fragile as the light that barely managed to penetrate the gloomy room. I will try to fix this, Michael. I will try to do the right thing, she promised, though she was not sure how to begin. As she left the prison, Emily felt more lost than ever. The complexity of her love for Michael, now more bitter than sweet, left a taste of ashes in her mouth. Walking back to her solitary life, she knew that the path ahead would be difficult and lonely, but necessary to redeem herself not only in Michael's eyes but, more importantly, in her own.